Before we start this video, a large thank you to Live48, JNX86BCN, Payne Gsong, Bernat James, and Link03783 for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And a massive thank you and shout out to Halo Burner, Ryan Belland, and Eric for their immense and massive support to the channel this month on Patreon. It is sincerely and greatly appreciated, gentlemen. I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, so upon request I was asked to cover shops and storing items, so we'll start with the one that's a little more complex, that being shops. And that's going to basically have us have to modify how we do our dialogue just a little bit, because in Elden Ring, NPCs with context menus, where they can do other things besides talk, actually have a twofold dialogue system. They have their greeting, which will change depending on their stage or state in the world. But then they have their additional talk options, which again will change depending on the stage and state in the world. So we're going to have to expand that logic just a little bit. An example of this will be you might have a different greeting from a person depending on how you progress their quest. But also if you find something that they can talk about in the world, or they have an option just to talk depending on where you're at in the world, there is an additional talk option in the context menu. Now we're going to make a system that will basically pop up a context menu, and depending on who you're talking to, it will fill that menu with options, because not everybody can buy and sell you items, not everybody can smith your weapons, etc. So this will be a nice way to handle that. I just wanted to give this little illustration, if you could call it that, here before we start, because we're going to be jumping around between stuff that has to do with the shop, and also we're going to begin working on this context menu because it's all tied together. With that though, let's begin. Hello everybody, welcome back. Hope you guys are having a lovely week. Let's start by going to the player UI manager and let's open that up. So I'm going to go and basically duplicate something here, or maybe I'll start from scratch actually, but what we want to do is make a new menu essentially. So let's go down here and I'm just going to create an empty game object, alt click to make it the size of my canvas, call it shop manager, and then I'm going to add a component here, call this player UI shop manager. So I'm going to try to make this as modular as possible, and by that I mean I want one shop manager to just load a shop depending on which character you're talking to and what's in their inventory. That way you don't have to keep making different managers for different shops. That will be kind of cluttered and messy. So we're going to create a menu, obviously make it the same size as before, and I'm going to make a background. Make sure you're on ticking raycast target. Now, disclaimer, I am not going to spend time making the UI pretty. This is going to be what they call a programmer UI. It's going to be very ugly, but it will serve the purpose. You guys can take the time to make it look nice and obviously add what features you want to it. So I am not a UI artist by any means, so this is going to just be some basic simple images, and then I'm not going to spend more time than I have to on it because I know most of you are here just for the logic and not to watch me make some really horrible UI. So let's anchor the image here over to the left. I got another image here and I've made it 640 width because that's 1920 divided by 3 and I want to be about a third of the screen. And I'm going to modify a little bit so it's not going to be exactly that dimension, but I just wanted to get a nice starting point on taking raycast target because again this is going to be a background, and what this is going to be is the inventory background. So this is where all the shop items are going to instantiate, and they're going to populate in this little window. So I'm going to make another window here. So we're going to say title background, and this is going to be the title of the shop. So let's say one shop you go to is called Somebody's Miracles, or we'll call Marvin's Miracles. And then you go to another guy's shop and it's called Henry's Swords, or you can put that up here basically, and this will be the name of the shop. So on taking raycast target, because this is a background, you can't click it, doesn't matter, but I will add a text component here, and it doesn't matter what goes there right now because this is going to change depending on the shop you're interacting with. But for now we will just say purchase items, and this is actually going to change too depending on if you're buying or selling, because we'll have two menu options, one for buying, one for selling, and in the context menu it will say something like talk, buy, or sell. Actually, let's have one for purchase and selling items. Let's have another one for the title so we can keep that separate. I should pull up an Elden Ring context image here on the side. I'm going to do that real quick just so I can loosely see what's going on there and make something similar. So we can say item category as well. I see that over here you can cycle and sort by the items in the shop, so you can do it by swords or upgrade materials or other things of that nature. So we can add that in too. Basically every time you filter the items, it'll only show the items in the shop of that category. Cool, we'll do that. So for now, we'll just say all items. So this is not going to change until we actually hook it up. And I'm just going to move this inside the background here, and we're going to add a vertical layout group to it because I want that to look a bit neater. Let's create an empty game object in this background and call it merchant window. And I'm going to make this, again, like the width was 640 and the height was 1080. And I'm going to anchor it to the left side of the screen over here and just snap it right here. And then I'm going to let's drag it out to a bit more than 640, we'll select that much. Let's just play around a bit until it looks nice. So let's drag everything in here, and then we're going to add a vertical layout group to it. So now we do a vertical layout group. It's going to mess up my order, obviously, of course. We'll say middle center. I want to drag my title background up top, and then the item category right below that. And I'm not going to make them space out. I'm also going to add a little more space here, so there's a bit off the edge there. And then I can kind of play around with this and make it look however I want. So I'm just going to make it so the spacing is like 5 or 10. And maybe we'll come back to this later. That looks fine to me. Okay, that's a good place to start. So just to show you how this is going to look, I guess I should just show you what it will look like. So first I'm going to duplicate the item category and call it current highlighted item. So when you highlight an item in the shop, this name here will change to the item you're highlighting. So if you have your selection over a Knight's Full Helm, this will say Knight's Full Helm basically. And if you want to, you can change the color of these titles to break it up a bit. So instead of having that white, you could have it as like gray. But again, I'm kind of touching now on UI design, so I won't talk too much on that, but it does just help to break things up. I like having the titles or things that you can interact with as different colors personally. Now I'm going to go down here and go to the shop manager merchant window, and let's go to the inventory background here. And if I were just to create an empty game object in here and call this inventory parent, you don't need to do this. I like having the background and parent as different objects in case I want to add things like trim or other graphics. But let's add a grid layout group. And then we're going to basically change the settings here a bit. So our items are 2 by 3 in ratio. So I'm going to say 90 by 120 for the cell size. And the spacing, we'll say 10 on each side. And then I can't remember if I want to get this, it's upper left for sure, but I'm just going to put it as middle center for a second. I'm going to drag in. Let's just take an inventory slot and put it in here so I can show you what it will look like. So this isn't actually what we're going to use. We're not going to use the equipment inventory slot, obviously, but if I bring this in here, let's change this to upper left, and let's put some padding 40 say on each side so it's a bit spaced. Now, if I were to duplicate this like 30 times, just a few, you can see pretend these are all shop purchase windows, like items that you can buy. This is how it's going to look basically. So let's delete that from the window for now though, because we're going to make shops have their own inventory prefab. So we can save the UI now, and now that we have some rudimentary UI, let's open up our player UI shop manager script. And let's drop in our namespace, delete the update and start functionality. Mine is SG, as is per tradition. And I'm going to make this derive also, what do we call it? Player UI window, I think. Because every player UI window has an open and close menu option, and it also has a menu window that we can hide. So if I go over here now, you can see we have a menu variable. Let's drag in our menu. Cool. We're not going to be using that for a while, but just to put it in there is good. Now let's go to our enums, because we want each shop to have a category. Because pretend you have like 5 shops in your game, or 50 for that matter. You want the shop to know what to load depending on the category, or rather what NPC's inventory to find in the world. So you call this merchants, shopkeepers, shops. I'm just going to call it shops. And inside here, the first one should be none, because obviously most AI characters in your game are probably not going to have shops. And then I'm just going to make one here called tutorial shop, because I'm just going to do one for the sake of this tutorial series. And that will be the shop that we use. So to make a comment here to keep this neat, I'm going to say used as shop IDs to, or say, determine which shop inventory should be loaded. Okay, now let's go and save our player UI prefab, and let's go over to the AI character inventory manager, because now we need to set up a few things. So let's start by putting in our enum here. Make a header for shop. You can call it shop ID if you want, because we're just going to make a public shops variable, and we're going to call this AI character or character shop ID. And defaultly it's none. So most AI will, as you can see here, first entry in the list, which is 0, is going to be none. Now let's go to the player inventory manager, because we have these items in inventory, but we can copy that and then delete it, and we can bring it to the base class, because now AI characters will have a reason to use their inventory, because if they have shops, we're going to basically load items and save items right from their inventory. So I'm going to paste this right here, and obviously you can do this in a different way if you want. I'm using the character's inventory because to me that just makes the most sense, and I think almost all, if not all, vendors in Elden Ring, everyone that I can think of comes from the character. So copy and paste, remove, and add item from inventory from the player inventory manager to the character inventory manager, so that way the player still gets it as well. And I'm just going to duplicate an AI spawn in my world. I got the blacksmith here. I'll duplicate him, and I'll duplicate his prefab, and I'll change it from blacksmith to shopkeeper. Okay, so if I go over here now, I'm going to drag that into the spawner. Good. Now go to his inventory manager, and oh, I didn't save, so that enum is not there. There we go. Change it to tutorial shop, and make sure he's on your network prefabs. Mine is here, so he can spawn in the world. I'll change that spawner to AI shop, and then I will go down and change his dialogue ID, which he doesn't have yet. So go to your character dialogue IDs. I'm going to call this one shopkeeper. I'm only going to have one just for the sake of showing you. So I'll call this shopkeeper dialogue ID. And now I will go to the world save game manager, and I'm going to make a list of dialogues for the shopkeeper. There we go, shopkeeper dialogues. And then down here, basically add references to your new character in all of these. So we have our get character dialogue by enum. And of course, we can add our shopkeeper. And I'm just going to make a variable that doesn't exist here by saying shopkeeper dialogue ID and pass the shopkeeper dialogues. So let's go up there now and make the shopkeeper dialogue ID as an int. And I'm going to say, just copy and paste blacksmith, change that to shopkeeper dialogue ID. Copy that, come back down here and paste this in the variable here. Okay, now find dialogue by stage ID does not change, but we have to set stage of dialogue. We're going to pass the shopkeeper, and then we're going to set that to the stage index that has been passed. So blacksmith, just going to copy that and paste it and change it to shopkeeper. And now under our current character data, we do not have a shopkeeper ID. So let's just put in the variable as if it exists and then copy it, go to our character save data and paste it. All right, I'm just going to copy this. And then we're going to come down here, go to character save data. And I think it's right at the bottom, scroll all the way down here. And right below blacksmith, I'm just going to say public int shopkeeper stage ID. All right, that's pretty much everything set up for the dialogue. Now it should work just like before. So I'm going to come down here and get stage IDs on load. I see that I didn't set the blacksmith, so I'll do that as well. Is equal to current character data blacksmith, and then shopkeeper ID is equal to current character data shopkeeper ID. All right, now let's save that. And I'm going to go back to the game here, and I'm going to duplicate the blacksmith dialogue. And I'm just going to add the shopkeeper dialogue. Now, the only thing we have here on an end event is opening the blacksmith window. And I'm just going to change this text real quick to good day. So the blacksmith could also be changed with this new system. Instead of opening straight to the blacksmith window, we could open a context menu like I showed at the beginning, and we could say it could be talk, and then the option below that could be blacksmith. So over here on dialogue and events under enums, I'm going to add a new event called, we can say NPC window. I'm not a fan of that name, so I'm probably going to change it, but for now that works. So sometimes NPCs will have a window open where you can buy, sell, talk. So there we go. If you don't want to jump straight to the menu, you use this. And that's how the blacksmith works also in Elden Ring, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. I have like 500 hours in the game, but honestly, I can't say for certain. I could say with 99% certainty. So let's go and say NPC window. And then we're going to go to Player UI Manager. And you can make this a pop-up, but I'm going to give it its own manager window instead because I think that suits it better. It's going to be a manager that basically loads the talk options based on who you're currently talking to, which means we also need to keep track of who you are currently talking to. So I'm going to say NPC window manager. I still don't like that name. We're going to think of something else. And I'm just going to copy the shop manager because it kind of is similar how we're going to basically work this out. What we're going to have up here is the title of the character you are talking to. And then below that, we're going to have a context menu that is basically filled with options. So these options can be talk, which is there all the time if you can open this menu. And then it is going to be, depending on what you're doing, buy, sell, blacksmith, etc., just things of that nature. And I just realized I deleted the title, which I didn't need to do, so I'm just going to undo that real quick actually in a sec, because we can keep that here, and we can simply use this background and one of the title windows that we had from the shop window. So yeah, TLDR, it's just going to be a window where you can talk to the character and then do their other actions if they have any at all. So a merchant will have buy and sell, a blacksmith will have blacksmith, etc. And then we can say up here, current NPC name. And now inside this background here, that was previously our inventory background, we can say, I'm going to say NPC chat options. And then in here, I can delete the inventory parent. We can add a vertical layout group, and then we can add some buttons. So I'm not going to make the buttons a prefab right now. I'm just going to basically place the buttons in here to show you the potential options. And when I've settled on how they're going to look for sure, I'll make them into prefabs and then edit them. But for now, I'll make them look very simple, just so you can get a sense of what's happening here. So I'm going to expand this, and again, not going to talk about what I'm doing with the UI too much here because it's really not that important. I'll just do a little very quick design here where the text is on the left side, and I change the colors a little. And honestly, this looks fine, but the text isn't legible, so there we go. I'll change it a bit. Looks good. And now I'm just going to say talk for the first one. And then I can duplicate this and then duplicate it again, because for this example, I will show talk, buy, and sell. And if you guys want, I can go back to the blacksmith and set up his dialogue to work like this too, if you want to see that. Okay, so talk, buy, and sell. And then I'm going to not space these buttons out, and that looks good. So this is basically what it's going to look like every time you talk to an NPC and they have this context menu. You'll have the talk, and then if their merchant buy and sell will appear. If not, this will not appear. Any other option they have will appear. So I'm going to actually call this dialogue window manager. That sounds way better than NPC chat options. So dialogue window manager, so I'm going to change this to dialogue window, and then we're going to say dialogue chat options. All right, now I'm going to add a script to this called dialogue window manager. So this one is, or dialogue window UI manager to keep the naming conventions. And I'm going to delete the start and update functionality, drop in my namespace as is per tradition. So some of the logic here I can rip from Nef, but not much of it, honestly, because shops in Nef work very different than shops in Elden Ring. But we do have a gentle guide to go by, so this should hopefully work pretty smoothly. Make it derived from player UI menu, just like before, drag in the menu. And let's put in a text mesh pro UGUI variable, which is just text mesh pro's text. We'll call this AI character name text. And this is whoever you're talking to. This will change depending on the character's name that you're speaking to. Let's make it a serializable field. And let's just drag it in there like so. Now let's go back and make a header. I'm going to paste this header up here first, actually. And we're going to say dialogue character. That would imply who you are talking to. And then down here, we're going to say dialogue options. So what is this going to consist of? Well, we're going to have buttons, which is hopefully going to autofill our using Unity engine.ui. Yes, it does. And then we're going to say talk to character button. Now, you don't even have to put this in there if you don't want to, because this is always enabled by default if you have this window open. Unless you're doing something special, you're not going to need this, but it is a button that appears. So I'm just going to comment it out. So this is always enabled. It's never going to change. Now we have our buy items button. This is only going to be enabled if you're talking to a merchant. And then we have our sell items button. Again, this is only going to be enabled if you are talking to a merchant, someone who can buy and sell items. So I'll make a comment here just so it's very clear. Only enabled if is a shopkeeper. And then you can do the same thing and paste down here, like so. I don't know why I'm tabbing these so far away. I probably tried to line it up unconsciously with always enabled, but I'm just going to move those back because it doesn't need to be out that much. All right, there we go. So, and just to really drive home this point, I'll make another example here too. And if you want, let me know. I can hook it up in another video. But we'll do one as if a blacksmith button was here too. So we can say blacksmith button. This button will only be enabled if you're talking to the blacksmith and you prompt his context window. So we'll make a comment here, only enabled if is a blacksmith. But again, this next few videos are going to be on shops, so I will comment this out for now. All right, that looks good. Now we can override the open menu. And then what we can basically do here is come right above this. Actually, let's just save this first and go back to the player interaction manager, because I just realized we need to store which character we're talking to. We have no way of knowing that right now. I was going to search the player for who we're currently talking to change the shop name. But go to our player interaction manager and add a public AI character manager variable called dialogue character. And what you want to do, this is a good way also to determine if the AI should track you using headIK if you have that enabled. So under interact, on a dialogue interactable, we're going to say player.playerInteractionManager.dialogue character is equal to this AI character. And right above that, just do a check. If the AI character for some reason is null, simply return. It should never be, but just in case. And now to disable this AI character, the safest way to go about it will be to go on cancel and on end, as this is called whenever the dialogue ends. So you can see here right below there's on or cancel current dialogue event. So let's go and move over to that. That's on the AI character sound effect manager. And all we got to do is go to that and then search the local player by getting it from the player UI. So we're going to say player UI manager .local player .instance.local player .player interaction manager .dialogue character if it equals this character, and then we're going to set it to null. Okay, and then do the same thing on current dialogue ended. Okay, now when you're done talking to this character, they should disappear from that variable. So real quick before I end the video, I'll just show you my project Nephalite. And in these specific examples, I don't have a talk to context option, but I do have a context menu. And you can see here when I talk to the blacksmith, there's a bunch of options, and then there's leave. And if I go over here and talk to Jira, there's options to gamble or open up his shop or leave. So it's going to work very similar to that. Okay guys, thank you for stopping by again this weekend. I hope you all have a very lovely weekend. A special thank you to my patrons for keeping my lights on. Thank you to the people who take the time to share the series via word of mouth, who take the time to like and comment on the video. You are all very much appreciated. I will see you guys next week.